Did Donald Trump set off the inflation bomb? Every other moment we hear someone saying that they prefer Trump to Biden because Biden gave us inflation. So, what causes inflation and who's really responsible for it? First of all, to make this understandable, we should break it down into two categories: monetary inflation and price inflation. The first is monetary inflation, and it's the simplest to understand. That's simply printing more money. Printing more money is the equivalency in economics of just adding more water to the soup. It looks bigger and you can fill more bowls, but you took all the same nutrients of the potatoes and carrots and chicken and spices and just diluted it down to make everyone's bowl look like it was full. But the value of each bowl was less. More dollars added to the system, but the total value of each dollar has now decreased. America has been on a printing spree since Ronald Reagan in the 1980s, but it has been accelerating. The largest spike in printing ever seen in our nation's history happened between 2017 and 2021. Of course, some people will immediately jump to COVID here, and yes, COVID played a role, but this spike began well before COVID ever existed. This pre-COVID spike was caused by a few factors. One, the government spending. Because when government spends money, it prints that money into existence. Another factor was the extreme low interest rates. While some people celebrated low interest rates, there's a negative side to extreme low rates. This was seen as a borrowing opportunity for banks, but that increased borrowing results in increased printing. You can't lend money that hasn't been printed into existence. This is for the Federal Reserve banks. This again waters down the soup. The other major cause of inflation is tax cuts. Going back to that soup, how we've already established, more dollars in the system waters down the soup, making each dollar worth less. One of the things that people fail to understand about a fiat currency is the primary function of taxes is to control the supply of dollars in circulation. Taxes take dollars out of the system. It's the control mechanism that allows for continued printing. Under our current system, where our government just prints money into existence, it has to withdraw that money each year, or the soup will quickly become too diluted and have no value at all. If you want to cut taxes without creating an inflationary event, you have to reduce spending, reduce printing. And it has to be done by the same amount as the tax cut. But our government never reduces the spending. So going back to our current situation, we saw a large corporate tax cut in 2017, and to a lesser extent the rest of the population, but regardless of who received the tax cut, it was still an inflationary action because it increased the amount of dollars in circulation. It diluted the soup. So these are the big ones, the primary cause of currency inflation, which is the bulk of the inflation, but next we need to look at price tag inflation. And let's start with the easy one, consumer taxes. In this case, we call this consumer tax tariffs. Tariffs are an import tax on goods, and while you might think of it being paid by country of origin, that's false. This tax is simply added to the price of the products, and the American consumer pays for it. Most of the news was focused on the Trump administration placing taxes on China and Mexico, but the one you probably felt the most was on Canada. Nearly everyone noticed the price of lumber shooting through the roof. This is because a large percentage of our plywood, 2x4s, and other building lumber is a product of Canada. Perhaps the biggest source of price tag inflation came from the price of oil. As a result of Trump's 2020 oil negotiations with Saudi Arabia and Russia, oil production was artificially suppressed from 2021 and through 2022, directly causing unnecessary high prices of gas at the pumps. Because oil is literally tied to everything from transportation to manufacturing of virtually all our products, any increase in the price of oil will affect the price of almost everything else. In addition to this, we saw numerous supply chain issues as a result of the inability to navigate the COVID-19 pandemic. This created product shortages, And every time there's a product shortage, it creates higher prices. The last one that we need to mention here is often referred to as greedflation. Companies artificially inflating the price tags just because they can and pocketing the profits. I've heard various figures here, and it seems you can safely say this greedflation resulted in a good 18% of the inflation of price tags. In some cases, this figure could be as high as 40% of price tag inflation. So let's look at this in terms of politics. The Trump administration is the clear source of the inflation bomb. The spending, the money printing, the tax cuts for corporate America, strong-arming the Fed to offer 0% interest rates, the consumer taxes, the COVID debacle, the Trump 2020 oil deal that kept oil production down. All of these things land squarely at the feet of Donald Trump. In 2021, Biden did continue the extreme printing and added approximately an additional $1 trillion in currency to Trump's $4 trillion that he had added. However, in the years since, printing has slowed greatly, and that $1 trillion that the Biden administration added has since been withdrawn from the system. So Biden effectively removed the amount of water that he had poured into the soup. Look, inflation has been an issue going back decades, and both parties have been a part of the problem. But the recent inflation explosion was clearly the Trump administration. I'm quite honestly no fan of Biden and have a long list of criticisms of his administration. But if you're voting, making decisions based upon inflation, you need to know where the inflation bomb came from. Everyone have a good day out there. And hey, remember to like, share, favorite, follow for more, repost, all that stuff. Have a good day.